you may feel depressed. And what will you do about that? Well, there's nothing to do about it, because you would have discovered at this point that the depression, when it's there, is the you of the time. And if you try to get out of it by some sort of distraction, you won't really do anything except cover up the dirt with white paint. So if you feel let down, meaningless, somewhat depressed by this whole thing, and you see at the same time you can't do anything about it, what happens? Why, you're simply watching what's happening. You don't know what's going to happen next. And it isn't just watching something that is formally identified as a depressed state, because there's a lot of other things going on too. There's the world around you. There's your breath breathing still, your eyes looking still, your ears hearing still. All that's going on. And you don't know what to make of it anymore. You can't believe anything about it because you know that's all a hoax. So there's nothing left for you to do but watch it. And you have become inwardly rather quiet just because you're worn out. There's nothing to do. And you realize that all escapes lead back to the thing you were running away from. You can take a detour. Detours, but they always get shorter. And you get back to where you started. So when this sort of defeat of all enterprises and ideals and aspirations occurs, you find yourself naturally, and not in an affected or forced way, in the contemplative state, where you're just watching what goes on. And even if you're automatically thinking about it, because you realize that those thoughts are futile so far as changing anything is concerned, you might as well try to sweep dust on the stairs with bamboo shadows. And so you watch your thoughts as if they were the ticking of a clock, or birds chattering outside the window, or water falling, and they just chatter on, and life does its thing. The thoughts, because they're just chatter, begin to go away, and the past has disappeared, because you know it's just memory. The future has disappeared because it hasn't happened. Never does, tomorrow never comes. There is no tomorrow. And if you don't realize that, it's useless for you to make plans for it. If you do realize there's no tomorrow, then maybe plans will be of use to you, because when they work out, you can enjoy the result. But if you're not all here, you can't. So tomorrow can only be handled by those who don't take it seriously. So there you are. Now, if you've read the literature, which many of you have, of mysticism and yoga, Buddhism, Vedanta, and so forth, you know it's said again and again and again that this kind of vision, this way of seeing, is always dependent upon transcending your ego, in one way or another, giving up. Well, here you are. You've given up. Only you are not able to pride yourself on having achieved a great achievement. And this is the snare for all people who go into these spiritual disciplines. They make a project of getting rid of their ego. And they're terribly proud of it. They come home and brag about how much they suffered, how long they sat and had their legs hurt so much. And this spiritual braggery is nothing more than blowing up and inflating the ego to a colossal degree, because the ego is undertaking the actually impossible but seemingly incredibly difficult task of getting rid of itself. So when you run into this kind of thing, don't be beguiled. All those disciplines to get rid of your ego have as their underlying design to persuade you that it can't be done. Not in a merely theoretical kind of persuasion, but so that you actually realize that you can no more get rid of your ego than you can put out fire with fire. It is precisely, you see, the ambition of the ego to be egoless. When you find a person who is what you might call frankly egotistic, makes no bones about it. He will be less egotistic, actually, than people who are very self-effacing. That's a curious thing. People, for example, who speak very frankly and tell the truth and come right out and say whether they like you or whether they don't, whether they want you around or whether they don't. And you say, well, can I stay overnight? And they say, sorry, but I'm tired and I don't want anybody around. You think, well, is that selfish? But that kind of selfishness is not really selfish, because with a person like that, you always know where you are. Nobody likes to impose on anyone else, and you can't impose on that kind of person. That makes for a very comfortable relationship. So you owe it to other people to be as egotistic as you are. Then they know where you stand. But if you come out full of love and full of good intentions and make promises to all kinds of people and say, oh, you'll do this, that, and the other for them, and then you forget about it, or you're too lazy, or you think you'd rather not. They've been relying on you for your promises, and then you let them down. Simply because you weren't selfish when it was time to be selfish. So, if somebody asks you, will you help me? Will you give me some money or something like that? If you're not going to do it, say no. And you shouldn't be ashamed of saying no. Because if you're going to do no eventually, do it now. But if you say, well, I'll think it over, I'll go back and look at my bank balance, that means no, but I don't want to say so. And people are always fouling each other up that way. So it's very important to be as egotistic as you are. Because the ambition to be less egotistic than you are is a very insidious form of egotism. And there is nothing more reprehensible than the ambition to be a saint.